Shalom to the elect of Israel, the hopeful elect of Israel. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian and Haitians, the elect of you Hebrew Israelites. Got to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rekah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule well, who teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the Akim pushing this truth like the of the earth, waking up the hopeful elect. Shalom to the outwalk who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah, coming into another lesson in truth, facts, faith, and edification. And this is an update on more wars and rumors of wars. So Lord's witness be edifying.
This is True News. I'm Dr. Burkhardt. Welcome to the Godcast for Monday, June 24th, 2019. I'm Kerry Kinsey, and here are your uncensored news headlines. President Trump has announced his latest round of hard-hitting sanctions against Iran. This time he's targeting the Islamic Republic's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
The supreme leader of Iran is one who ultimately is responsible for the hostile conduct of the regime. He's respected within his country. His office oversees the regime's most brutal instruments, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Sanctions imposed through the executive order that I'm about to sign will deny the supreme leader and the supreme leader's office and those closely affiliated with him and the office access to key financial resources and support. The assets of Ayatollah Khamenei and his office will not be spared from the sanctions.
Well, Russia has announced that it will assist Iran in skirting the newly imposed sanctions. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov did not specify exactly how Moscow intended to do that, but Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov took a much starker position, declaring the new sanctions illegal, even before they were announced. Amid reports, President Trump opted to launch a cyber war against Iran when he canceled his military strikes against the Islamic Republic last week. Debka File is reporting the first shots fired in this digital war happened just hours after Iran downed an American spy drone over the Gulf of Oman that targeted Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' missile command centers and the computer systems of the Iranian Space Agency deemed responsible for recent attacks on oil tankers. The report also notes U.S. Cyber Command is in the dark about Iran's cyber capabilities, and the plan carries the very real risk that Russia and China may come to its aid, taking it as an opportunity to test their own cyber capabilities against the U.S. Iran says the cyber attacks on its military have failed, addressing the reports on his official Twitter account. Information and Communications Technology Minister Mohammad Javad Azari Jaromi says his country's national firewall has prevented 33 million individual cyber attacks. He says the U.S. tried hard, but was not successful. And Iranian military officials warned the U.S.
So there you go, man. These Edomites, these North American Edomites, and they losing, man. And Russia and China is finna join with Iran, which they pretty much already have. So this is Matthew 24, man. Wars and rumors of wars. This thing is playing out heavy, man. And it's finna get serious. So I had to fast forward so I can continue with this video.
Your True News team will be in Osaka, Japan this week for the G20 Summit. Doc Burkhardt and Edward Zoll will be in Osaka to report the most important news developments at this important meeting of world leaders. President Trump, China's President Xi, and Russia's President Putin will be among the world leaders attending the summit. America's trade war with China and the United States, sanctions on Iran will undoubtedly be at the top of the list of items on the agenda. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said today that his country will do everything possible to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. What Mr. Netanyahu did not say, however, is that Israel sold to Iran missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads to targets throughout the Middle East, including American military bases in Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates. Edward, Doc, and I will have more to share with you today regarding the possibility that Iran already possesses nuclear weapons and has missiles, complements of Israel, to deliver those warheads. First, however, we have some important news stories to discuss in this segment of the program. So, gentlemen, glad to have you here.
Good to be here, sir.
You guys are leaving early in the morning.
Yes.
What is it, about a 18-hour flight?
A little over 18-hour combined flight. So, yeah, long trip.
It will be. But we're looking forward to your reports. This is going to be an important G20. There's something in my spirit says this one's important. And, you get President Xi, President Putin, and President Trump in attendance. And the question is whether there's going to be some side meetings off to the side of the main summit between those three. And so that's why we want you there to tell us what you're hearing, on the ground, the rumors that are circulating. Hey, I'll read through some stories before we get to the main topic about Israel supplying missiles to Iran. This first one should concern everybody. This is Reuters. The U.S. deployment of land-based missile systems near Russia's border could lead to a standoff comparable to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, said Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. Russia, of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962, when Russia placed ICBMs in Cuba, and which was a response. This is the thing we never talk about. Yeah, we forget about that. They placed the missiles in Cuba because the U.S. placed warheads in Turkey,
Yes.
which they're still there today. So, Mr. Ryabkov said the things. What he said was, this is to Rivosti News Service, if things get as far as an actual deployment on the ground of these sorts of systems, then the situation won't just get more complicated. We could find ourselves in a situation where we have a rocket crisis close not just to the crisis of the 1980s, but close to the Caribbean crisis. So, in 1962, it was John F. Kennedy telling Khrushchev, get the warheads out of Cuba. This next one could be the opposite, or it could be Vladimir Putin telling Donald Trump, get your warheads, get your troops, get your tanks out of Poland, get them away from our border. So pay attention to that warning. This is not the first time the Russians have talked about a Cuban Missile Crisis.
On that too, Rick, remember the Black Swans, the bombers, the Russians landed in Venezuela. You posed, how do we know that those bombers landed without bombs? I mean, it's highly possible the Russians could see Venezuela as potentially a new Cuba if they wanted to escalate or respond to the U.S. deployment of troops, assets, and potentially missile-based systems in Poland, Lithuania, or Ukraine.
That's right. Mr. Ryabkov also said, as far as the U.S. plans are concerned, the White House, Pentagon, and NATO's International Secretariat keep telling us the U.S. and the alliance have no plans or intention to deploy future systems on this range on the ground in Europe. The current events, in particular those involving the Russia-NATO Founding Act, which declares that the alliance has no plans or reasons to deploy considerable forces near Russian borders, indicate that all this can easily be changed. And that's what he said. We should brace. Now listen to this. Mr. Ryabkov said, the deputy foreign minister, we, meaning the Russians, we should brace for the worst scenario.
Right.
What is the worst scenario?
Nukes on their border.
No. The worst scenario is nuclear war.
Right.
That's what he's saying, Edward. We should brace for the worst scenario, a nuclear war with the United States.
And so when they see provocative actions by NATO of putting missile launchers right on the Russian border, they have to assume that the next step, the aggressive step of NATO, is going to be nuclear war beyond that. Because we've already said that we are now a first strike nation. If we're putting missiles on the Russian border, then the Russians are going to say, hey, everyone has already said, they've already said they're a first strike alliance now. We need to be prepared for the worst scenario, nuclear war.
Yes, the U.S. had published that document.
Yes, that's policy. That's actually doctrine now for the U.S. Defense, and especially for our allies. You think about this. This also means the weapons in space. The thing Vladimir Putin brought up at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. If they're being, let's say, the worst case scenarios, they need to also be able to first strike us. Because how are you going to stop a country that is preparing to kill?
He referred to the Mk-41 launchers. So these are supposed to be the missile defense shield to block Russian missiles from reaching Europe and the United States.
They're defending forward.
Yes, but the reason that the U.S. is putting these missile launchers on the border is not to attack Russia. It is to shoot down Russian missiles. That's the official reason. The Russians have said all along, how do we know that those aren't offensive launchers? That you're putting them on the border, and now there's like a 2-minute window from the time it launches and it reaches downtown Moscow. And he said, there are no plans, but the Mk-41 launchers are a reality.
Yes.
NATO's intentions have been aggressive all along, and they remain so. If it comes to the real deployment of such systems on the ground, the situation will not just get worse, but aggravate to the maximum. And we may find ourselves in a situation of a missile crisis pretty close to the Caribbean one. So he is saying we're getting close to the point that Russia has no other choice but to order the United States to dismantle and vacate or go to war. Because Russia is aware the United States has now switched to a first strike posture, and they're saying, wait, we're looking at your policy. You're now telling us, you're putting it on the internet, that you now think you can win a nuclear war. You're willing to do a first strike, and you're putting the launchers on our border. And so if you carry out your new policy, a first strike, we only have like 2 minutes to prepare for a nuclear warhead hitting Moscow.
You've dumped MAD, the MAD doctrine, and become MAD.
Yes.
Mutual assured destruction kept us basically from falling into nuclear war during the Cold War. But that's no longer the policy of the United States.
So again, the way I always like to present it, look at the scenario, flip this thing around. Russia puts missile launchers on the Mexican border with Texas.
Right.
Russia puts missile launchers in Cuba and the Bahamas. Okay.
How would we respond?
And Canada, Canadian border. All right, and America is completely ringed by missile launchers. Then, all right, Russia say, this is just for our protection. We're putting these here to shoot down your missiles if you try to shoot us. And then Russia publishes a new war doctrine that says, we've changed our mind. We now think nuclear wars are winnable, and we are now a first strike country. We're willing to go and hit somebody first with nuclear warheads because we think we can win the war. Now you tell me, what would be the U.S. reaction?
We'd be demanding that all missiles be dismantled and moved away from our borders. I mean, right now,
Doc, we would, as people, we would be in a state of shock.
Yes.
We would be building bomb shelters. We would be buying whatever you can to survive nuclear radiation.
just like we were doing back in 1962.
And a lot of people, quite frankly, those with the financial resources would be moving out of America as fast as they could go.
Right? And back in the 62 missile crisis, the warning was there were you'd have just 9 minutes before a nuclear strike from Cuba. 9 minutes. Now, what if it was only 2 minutes? Because that's what the Russians would have with the Mk-41 missile launchers. So they would only have 2 minutes to prepare. So this is like the Cuban Missile Crisis, the 62 crisis.
So the Russian leadership they're coming to that crisis point where they're privately saying in their defense meetings Either we strike an agreement with the United States and the United States removes their missile launchers, or we have to take them out. We have to carry out a first strike on America
For the survival.
for the survival of the Russian people. That's where it's at. Last week we came within 10 minutes of going to war with Iran. And right here is in the Russian news is the deputy foreign minister saying we are quickly approaching another Cuban Missile Crisis.
We're approaching World War
We
III.
stood still for a week, wondering if we were all going to die. And so, I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was a child, but I remember it. I remember the fear that was in people's voices, and I remember the adults in my family talking. I remember an uncle building a bomb shelter. I remember the bomb. The nuclear war drills in elementary school, where we're crawling on our hands and knees, and teachers yelling, "Do not look out the window; you'll be blinded." We're 6, 7, 8 years old, and they're telling us you're going to be blinded if you look out the window.
A lot of these adults, their memories, they still had memories from 1945 when we dropped the atomic weapons in Japan. The images, the destruction that they saw, taking place there, now is coming home. Now is being made real.
That's right.
So, but a modern day Cuban Missile Crisis is far worse, because most people have blissful ignorance to any of these stories, any of these reports, any of the news. I mean, most people will not even know. Most people didn't even know about the tweets that President Trump said last week.
That's just it. What Edward's saying. If a year from now we're at another Cuban Missile Crisis and the Russians give an ultimatum to America, move the missiles in 5 days or we strike, most Americans won't even know it. Because they're going to be walking around looking at their phones, or playing video games. They'll be on Facebook. They won't have any idea that they're walking into a nuclear holocaust.
That's why the Edomites created social media and keep our people blinded.
By the news networks, because they're not going to tell the people. All right, we had Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, National Security Advisor John Bolton, and Special Envoy Brian Hook. They're all in the Middle East right now. Have any of them left? I know over the weekend all three were visiting Israeli and Arab leaders.
From my understanding, they're still all in their respective areas. John Bolton being in Israel, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, being in Saudi Arabia, and Brian Hook, our Special Envoy for Iran, actually visiting Kuwait City. They do have a couple other stops, especially for the Secretary of State. He's reportedly going to visit all our Gulf state allies in this whirlwind tour. And I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if we didn't find some of these national security officials either showing up at the G20 or going to the economic conference in Bahrain, which is scheduled to begin on Monday.
That's right. So the big peace plan.
$50 billion peace plan.
Yeah.
The plan of pieces.
Doc, I don't know if you read what the Israeli ambassador to the United States said today. He said it in an op-ed. Danny Danon. An op-ed in the New York Times. He literally said to the Palestinians today, "What's wrong with surrender?" He said it.
I saw the title
There
there.
it is, right there. There's the New York Times. Look, this is the Israeli ambassador saying to the Palestinian people, "What's wrong with Palestinian surrender?" How arrogant and cocky can you be? And he's doing this as Jared Kushner is about to bring forth the so-called plan. What is the plan? Surrender. Yes, it's exactly what my boss said it was. Surrender. And they're out. The Israeli Zionists are now saying, yes, it is surrender. You're not. We're not going to treat you with human dignity. We're treating you as vermin have been conquered.
Well, they have been conquered.
Yes. And he's saying, get over it. You've been conquered. You're going to remain conquered. And this is the best that you're going to get.
This comes from the same Israeli ambassador who said at the Jerusalem Post Conference, actually about a week ago, that Israel has a biblical right to the land. He invoked again this belief that there is no such thing as Palestine and anything for the Palestinian people, that Israel actually has a righteous right, essentially, to
So you got to be righteous. Like I say often, if living in the Holy Land requires living holy in the land, and the Israelis are not holy, they're wicked. So if they want to claim a biblical right to live in that land, then they have to claim the biblical responsibility to live the way God told them to live. Right?
Just like the scripture says, how can you claim a deed to the land when you don't meet the requirements of the deed?
That's right. So that means no more gay pride rallies in Tel Aviv. That means no more shooting Palestinian kids, women on the edges of the borders for the Hebron and
Absolutely. So they don't want to take responsibility for the way that they live. They just want to throw the Bible around, the Old Testament. See, God gave us that land. Yes, but God also gave you responsibility for the way you lived in the land. And the reason that it was taken from you was because you became so wicked.
Yes. Have you improved since then?
No. They're just as wicked as they were before. My hope, my desire for the Israelis is that they come under conviction of the Holy Spirit, realize that their ancestors crucified the Son of God who was sent to Israel to save them, and that they would be full of remorse and sorrow for what their ancestors did, that they would cry out to God for forgiveness and believe on the name of Jesus Christ and become Israel.
Right.
His name is Yahushua. And this is the messed up part. These Edomites really think these gutter rats in Israel is the real Jews, man. See, this is how stupid these Edomites sound, man. When you wake up to the truth and you understand this guy here, Rick Wiles, and these other devils with him, okay, Elwood and this guy, Doc, they really believe that those Edomites in our land are the real Jews. Listen to what he's saying, man. This shows you these Edomites don't know these scriptures, man. They don't. Because if they did, they knew that the real Jews was going to be in poverty, man.
They're not Israel now. But
They never was Israel.
I thought about this over the weekend.
These Edomites is crazy, man.
Where the Israelis are at, all right, the Israelis, the Jews living in Palestine, is that their passport expired over 2,000 years ago. God implemented a new passport. They had passports to Israel, but the kingdom of God voided the passports.
Right.
Now, the king did not say, because your passports have expired, you're no longer allowed in this kingdom. The king simply said, you have to apply for the new passport.
Right.
So now what he's saying is that all people can come in to the heritage of Israel, to the inheritance of Yahshua. This is what he's saying now. The old passport is expired, talking about the old covenant, but the new covenant is for everybody. No, man. Hebrews 8 and 8 say different, man. It's only for the Israelites. Listen to this devil, man.
There's no grandfather rule.
Right, you're not grandfathered in.
It is a grandfather rule, man. Okay? Hebrews 8 and 8, man, clearly reads. This is Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 8. I'm going to start at 7, actually. Hebrews chapter 8 and verse 7. And it reads, for this, it reads, this is Hebrews 8 and 7. But, matter of fact, I'm reading 6. But now, have he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. Verse 7, for if that first covenant have been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, when I will make a new covenant, with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. Who came out of Egypt with Moses? The 12 tribes of Israel. Because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua. Verse 10, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws in their minds and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a power, and they shall be to me a people. And they should not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. Now, when you go to Galatians, okay, the Lord is talking to a specific people, man. Israelites. It's Galatians 4:4, and it reads, but when the fullness of the time was come, power sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law, that we may receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons of power, have sent forth the spirit of his son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Wherefore thou art no more servant, but a son, and if son, then an heir of power through Hamashiach, man. The adoption of sons, man, to be brought back, man, to be redeemed, man. This has nothing to do with no other nation, man. So these Edomites is going off and they wicked, man.
So you have to come to the kingdom and get a new passport. It's the new covenant passport,
which I just read in Hebrews 8.
Welcomed. But most
You heard he just said all are welcome. No, man, this is only for Israel, man. This is only for you so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, West Indian, Haitians, man. Okay? The elect on this side, you Hebrew Israelites, man. This is not for no Edomites or no Indians. This ain't for Elamites or Ishmaelites or Moabites or Ammonites or Hamites, man. This is only for Israelites, man. Thus saith the scripture. Read Hebrews 8, 7 through 10, man.
Jews said, we don't want it. Thank God there was a small group of Jews who said, you better believe we desire that new covenant. If it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't be here.
That's right.
But most of the Jews rejected the new passport. And they're still outside of the kingdom.
No, 2/3 rejected. Then no, you Edomites outside the temple, man.
Stubbornness, rebellion, pride, wickedness. They won't submit to the king and get a new passport.
2/3 of Israel will not submit to the king, man.
Bring your old passport and turn it in. It's no good.
Which is true.
Trying to tell the whole world
it's the new covenant Lord making with us.
Rights based on an old passport that expired 2,000 years ago.
Yes.
Turn that thing in and get a new one. It's much better than the old one. And I got one. I came in.
Yeah, the Edomite talking about he got one. He came in. No, man. You Edomites are outside the temple, man. You are profane. Hebrews 12 and 16, man.
Joe Lieberman, vice presidential candidate.
You Edomites are outside the temple, man.
Iran. This is Jerusalem Post. Former U.S. Senator Joe Lieberman criticized President Trump pulling out of the Iran military strike last Friday. He gave this interview to the Israel Army Radio.
Yes, at their Cyber Week, basically for recruiting for Talpiot, Unit 8200.
Oh, really? There was their recruitment?
It's a big week down in Tel Aviv right now.
And what are they recruiting for?
They're recruiting for the special military units, Talpiot, Unit 8200, various other clandestine units.
Why would an American politician be there?
Well, Mr. Lieberman loves showing up at a pro-Israel event, especially AIPAC. He spoke at the AIPAC.
Of this particular event? Also, so you got a former American senator, former
Vice
presidential candidate, and he is on Israel Army radio today saying, "I want war."
Right. So sign up.
So which country does Joe Lieberman represent? Does he represent the United States or does he represent Israel? He's on the Army broadcasting of a foreign country.
Yes.
Now imagine, Doc, we go to Beijing and we do a radio show on
PLA.
the PLA Army radio, and we call for something that benefits the Chinese military.
Where Xi Jinping to sink a U.S. carrier going for the Taiwan Straits.
We couldn't come back home.
Yeah, that's a good one. Imagine we go on Beijing PLA Army radio and we call for bombing Taiwan.
Right. We wouldn't be able to come back home. They wouldn't let us back in the country.
But see, this is home if you're a Zionist because America has been annexed. So he never left home.
But did you see the other comment that Mr. Lieberman shared, the piece of wisdom he shared with Army Ready? He said that in war, as sad as that may be, unfortunately people are killed. That's just the way of the world.
Unfortunately, people are killed.
Yes.
In war. So in his mind, we're already at war with Iran.
Mr. Lieberman said the U.S. must strike targets that are visible and public. What is that?
Like
Hospitals, schools,
Malls,
incubators? I mean, what is it?
There you go.
He wants to see collateral damage. He wants to see public blood. It's no different than
He
execution.
wants to see,
This is like an execution.
destruction.
And if John McCain were alive today, he'd be singing that song once again. Bomb, 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 Iran. So,
Right, that's another example of how American Zionists are doing the work of a foreign country, calling for military strikes on behalf of Israel, using American military men to carry out Israel's military objectives. Who controls who? This is so obvious. Look, it's not the little country of Israel, it's the worldwide Zionist movement. The worldwide Zionist movement controls both Israel and the United States. It's not the little country of Israel controlling the United States. It's the world Zionist movement controlling both of them for its interests, for its benefit. And Joe Lieberman is part of that globalist Zionist movement. President Trump imposed new sanctions on Iran, including on the supreme leader. What did he do today?
He actually claimed he's locking up billions of dollars in Iranian capital and assets, and according to President Trump, that this is going to actually block access to further financial resources and support. Now, the details of this so far are pretty limited, but it appears to have been assets which were placed overseas, maybe in intermediary countries, and things that were previously not targeted, such again as the personal assets of their supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
And also on 8 senior commanders of the Iranian Navy, Air Force, and Ground Forces.
Yes.
So what, are they going to seize their assets?
that's kind of the plan. That's what they've done in other countries like Venezuela and other places as they put the squeeze on the leadership, hoping someone will turn, someone will flip, someone will come over to the other side.
You're also going to think these assets, like in Venezuela, they may be redirected to groups like the NUK or groups that John Bolton wants to replace potentially the government who currently reigns in Tehran.
But as we reported in headlines, the Russians have come up and said, you know what, we'll assist Iran in getting around these sanctions. So they've already made it clear that as far as the Russians are concerned, we're going to continue to assist Iran in this process.
Other than that, just in the way that the U.S. thinks,
Yes.
then the U.S. has to put more sanctions on Russia to punish them.
That's also why Russia and China have been developing a parallel system, because they know, and not just Russia, but China knows also that the same weapons which are being used against Venezuela and Iran could very well be turned on them and have actually been threatened to be used in that manner.
The New York Times reported that the U.S. Army and intelligence officers are working on plans for covert actions against Iran in the Persian Gulf.
What's interesting about this is there was a report over the weekend that we actually did use cyber attacks on Iran last Thursday. We didn't use missile strikes in Iran, but reportedly we did use the same cyber offensive, let's say defend forward tactics that were reported the previous week in regard to Russia in relation to Iran. This reporting and another leak to the New York Times from classified, basically cyber command, is that they would attack disabling Iranian boats, disabling ground systems.
And wait to hear this third one. Go ahead.
And spread false information so as to undermine support for the Iranian regime.
The U.S. is going to spread false information, I guess, in Iran and around the world. Are you telling me that the U.S. government is going to plant fake news stories in the news media, and the news media is going to publish them?
Slap my pappy.
You got it. Imagine they've admitted, all right, that they've spread fake news.
Although Rick, the clear hadn't started yet, right?
They've been doing this stuff for decades.
Yes.
Dem Kafal reported over the weekend that there was actual cyber attacks that already took place. But the Iranians are claiming, we've seen these attacks. We've defended against 33 million such attacks. And so, do you think there's credence to that? I don't think there's a reality to that.
I don't know. I mean, the Iranians said that they successfully, pushed back the cyber attack. I have no idea. I just want to go back to the fake news stories. So, how many Americans comprehend that our intelligence agencies and the Pentagon spread fake news? That they have vast departments that create fake news stories, and they have agents inside the major newspapers and the news networks that get those news stories out to you. And if they do this to foreign countries, do you think that they would do it to you? Do you think that they would plant fake stories in your mind to undermine your values, your beliefs?
That's why people in America is destroyed.
Faith?
Because they be getting fake news, man.
That's what they've been psychological warfare against the American people.
That's
for
what they've been doing
decades.
for decades, man.
Well, remember back, a lot of the war movies in the past 2 decades have
Job 13 and 4 said they are all forges of lies, man.
many reports by and alliances with the Pentagon, with the CIA. They've actually acted as consultants on many of the major action films regarding the U.S. military. And it's been as a way to paint the U.S. military as the patriots, the heroes of the world. That is propaganda. It is what it is.
I'm just still waiting for the day I want to find out how many major Christian Zionist ministries on television and radio have been funded by Israel and or the CIA and the Pentagon.
The TBN, the Trinity Broadcast Network, all those false pastors is paid off, man.
Say American Israeli billionaires. How many major Christian Zionist ministries on TV and radio have been secretly funded by foreign intelligence or domestic intelligence agencies, Israeli intelligence, billionaires?
He's speaking.
For the purpose
He's
of
speaking about the
changing
elites, the
what
Rothschilds.
American Christians think about Jesus Christ and the Bible. They've gotten into the church and they've changed the gospel.
Exactly, with the 501c3 charter.
Replacement theology is replacing the cross with the Star of David, replacing Jesus with the state of Israel. This is the real replacement theology, and it was done by stealth methods, propaganda that came into the churches, changing the way people think, persuading American Christians to give up their position in Christ,
Yes.
and give it over to people who hate Christ.
Well, this
You
only
tell
for
them that it's
this is
deception
only for the
because
1/3 of
they don't
Israel
see it at
anyway.
all. What happens?
You get a violent
Get a violent response.
Yes.
Not we can disagree on something, but
They won't let you disagree.
You can't disagree on it. You can have a different opinion. Pride and hate rise up in it.
Absolutely. All right, I want to go to this next story. Reuters Secretary of State Pompeo discussed Iran and maritime security with rich Gulf allies on a trip to the region on Monday. A senior U.S. Department of State official said the U.S. is building a coalition to protect Gulf shipping lanes by having all eyes on shipping. What's underway?
So there is probably a sentinel program for what's being referred to as proactive deterrence. What Secretary Pompeo kind of alluded to in Riyadh is that we're going to build together a coalition of Gulf states, including, let's say, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, any nation that has a stake, even India, let's say, in that region. A couple of the nations, actually, which were previewed as part of this Sentinel program, were countries actually like South Korea, China, India. And what they're going to do is they're going to not only bring in naval assets, but potentially we could set up missile defense systems along not just the Strait of Hormuz, but also other key oil junctures in the Middle East.
Now, I saw a headline. This is the front page of the Times of London today. The headline was, "You're on your own. Trump tells nations shipping oil." Front page, Times of London. Says President Trump told countries that they should protect their own oil shipping lanes from attack in the Gulf. Listen to this, Doc. Declaring that the United States had little need for a presence in the Middle East as it approached energy independence. This is a boast. I can't believe that nobody in the U.S. knows that he just said this. There's so much in that one sentence. President Trump's telling nations that are shipping oil through the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, you pay for your own protection. We're not going to take care of you. Why? Because we don't have to be here anymore. We've got too much oil.
Are we hearing two conflicting states of mind here between Secretary of State Pompeo and President Trump?
Yes.
Or are they the same thing?
No, Doc, there's a conflict here. And I didn't bring the article with me. I forgot what. President Trump ripped into John Bolton.
Oh, yes.
Basically just said,
Chuck Todd of Meet the Press.
said if he had his way, he'd bomb everybody.
He said he has some doves and he has some hawks. And John Bolton is definitely a hawk. And as you noted here, during that interview, he did not defend the National Security Advisor. And in an odd way, it pointed out that this man is he's the author, he's the architect behind any of the battle plans, not just with Iran, but most of the countries in the world that we're actually planning in some kind of conflict with.
And sometimes it seems like, you've talked about it before, President Trump, his management style is to have two extreme groups who battle it out in front of him. Right. And so it seems like in the White House he has the John Boltons who want to go to war, and he's got another group that's telling him, hold the horses, let's not do this. But when President Trump speaks on his own, it's never to go to war. This comment sounds like the Donald Trump who ran for president in 2016.
Yes.
But he's not only is he saying, like he's saying to NATO, hey, you guys pay for NATO. What he's saying here is, we don't have to pay for your protection of your oil ships because America now has too much oil.
As a matter of fact, you should be paying us.
To protect, he's literally saying, America, if you want America's military might to protect your oil ships, here's the rate card. We're going to charge you a fee.
Don't we become like a mercenary state?
That's what we're becoming.
They've been the bully.
A rent-a-cop.
They have always been
Policeman
the
of the
bully.
world. But now we're going to be a privatized policeman of the world. Here's the rate card. You want us to be the policeman? Here's the rate. You choose which services you want. We'll send you the invoice.
Isn't that like protection money?
Yes.
What organization does protection money?
The mafia.
Which North America is.
Of saying,
These
the
Edomites.
point I'm trying to get across here.
The
guys,
Edomites
he's
is the
telling
mafia.
the Middle East, America, we have too much oil. What does that say to the Middle East?
We might be done with the petrodollars.
We're done with the petrodollar.
Well, President Trump has been hinting around over the past month or so a couple comments about the gold standard once again, about maybe it's time to go back to gold. So it's almost at times, Rick, and it's like we have two different President Trumps at times.
And he said, why are we protecting the shipping lanes for other countries for many years for zero compensation? all of these countries should be protecting their own ships on what has always been a dangerous journey. We don't even need to be there, in that the U.S. has just become by far the largest producer of energy anywhere in the world. Well, to me, that's a direct message to Saudi Arabia. We can dump you in the petrodollar any day we want to.
And if you remember, the last time this was threatened was last year. The Saudi government ran an op-ed in their top state-backed TV outlet. They said that if there ever is any move toward dumping the petrodollar, you could see Russia or China invited into putting military bases in Saudi Arabia. We will dump U.S. treasuries the same way China is threatened. And they could build their own alliances in the region, which would undermine strategic resources and assets of the United States. And far more, we don't know what the Saudis really could do to our economy. 9/11, for example, the Saudis threatened this when it came to our 28 pages, the classified to this day 28 pages.
I suspect the U.S. has a secret cryptocurrency tucked away that they're going to bring out maybe in the early 2020s as cash fades away.
Maybe we really own Libra, the Facebook cryptocurrency.
Cash is already fading away. They're trying to bring in the RFD microchip, which they will.
But I do.
A one world currency.
I think they're going to bring out a new currency. It'll be a crypto dollar.
Which it will.
Phoenix.
And
Digital.
It may be a two-tier dollar.
The
One
RFID
for domestic
microchip.
use, one for international use. But what he's saying in that statement is we're done with the petrodollar. And we don't have to defend the Strait of Hormuz anymore because we don't need to be over here anymore.
Okay, so why are we there?
Oh, well, that takes us back to Israel. Because Israel wants us to blow up Iran.
We'll say, we make comments like we're going to dump the petrodollar, and yet we're still selling nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. So go figure that out, Rick.
Well, I suspect Secretary Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton are not
All
following
nations is going to
let's say
lose
the talking points of
with this
President
World
Trump's.
War III.
So we're okay.
But
with
the main
Saudi
one that's
Arabia
gonna lose
having
the most
nuclear energy,
is these
which they
Edomites.
develop
That's who's going to lose the most.
warheads.
So we're not okay with Iran having it.
All right, so let's go back to where we were at Friday. And we got to it pretty late, and here we are again. We're getting late in the program. So we touched on this, what was a 1986 New York Times article about Project Flower. Project Flower was in the 1970s. I know some people contacted us and said, that story can't be factual because you guys were talking about the Shah of Iran. Israel was selling weapons to the Shah of Iran. He was overthrown in 79. Yes, that's true. The article was published in 1986 about Project Flower in the 1970s.
Because the weapons trade carried on after the Shah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the 1986 article. Documents detail Israeli missile deal with the Shah. And I think we stumbled onto something by accident or Holy Spirit inspiration on Friday's program. Because they were talking about the books, that all these records were in books.
Yes.
And I said, maybe the books were the documents that Mossad raided from that little dilapidated warehouse in Iran.
Yeah,
Yes.
remember the big presentation that Prime Minister Netanyahu made with all the DVDs and the books and everything. Look at everything we got from Iran. We went to Iran, went to some dilapidated old garage, got these books and DVDs.
They had their nuclear secrets. They had their nuclear secrets.
Run them back here and look at them. Just look at them here, folks. Take a picture. Take a video here. We got them. I think then something stank about it.
I think what they did is that they realized that all of the paper trails showing that Israel armed Iran with missiles were in that little warehouse. And they went in one night and hauled off truckloads of those old documents that the Iranians forgot were even there.
And it'd be very, very hard to complain about Iranian missiles being used to rain fire and destruction down on Tel Aviv and Jerusalem if you were actually one of the people that helped them produce these
And North
weapons.
America.
That's right. So go ahead, Doc.
And let's not leave out North America mainly. Hey, so with that, I'm gonna give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rakah Quadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, rule well, will teach well, and a sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, waking up the hope for the elect. Shalom to the Akwa who are listening and learning. Hey, they show you, man, that we another day closer to war, man, to destruction, to North America being destroyed, and Israel, and the salvation for the elect. Shalom.